We live in an increasingly fast-paced world, where a combination of technology and a restless and overexcited media seek to instill in us a mindset of demanding instant solutions to sort out our problems. So when things do not get sorted as quickly as we desire, then a sense of frustration, impatience, and stress can ensue. But grief, of course, is not like that. It's not something that can be sorted, let alone quickly. Because once we have been bereaved, we will always be bereaved. We cannot be unbereaved. Even if the rawness and intensity may soften and sink, the slightest things can bring the sharpness back through the surface. So when we grieve, we find ourselves at odds with the so-called normal and expected pattern of life. The author Nancy Stevens spoke about bereavement like this. There are things that we don't want to happen but have to accept, things we don't want to know but have to learn, and people we can't live without but have to let go. And that takes time. The gap in that phrase between the but and the have to let go is a big gap. And far from being quick, it is a slow procession. Tonight, we may acknowledge our place somewhere in that procession. Well, anyone who has had a funeral service here will know that after we have remembered the story of someone's life, and before we move on in the service to hear the words of hope found in the Bible, we're invited to join in a slow procession as we leave our seats, queue, wait, and shuffle forwards to light a candle. We do not rush. We will do the same tonight. And we all saw this very thing illustrated nationally in the way millions of people left their homes, queued, waited, and shuffled, unrushed, past the coffin of the Queen earlier in the year. Grief can then be illustrated as a slow procession, because grief is not something we can simply rush on from, but only shuffle forwards with. It is in the shuffle of the slow procession that we have the opportunity to process and reflect. This is where I believe God can be heard speaking to us. In the reading we've just heard, the author St. Paul begins that with hope and ends with reconciliation. And for Paul, hope is not the rather shallow and dismissive, "Oh, it'll be all right," that is so often bandied about so casually today, but which is bound to disappoint. Hope is something deeper and more powerful because it is deeply rooted in his faith. Because of this faith in Jesus, Paul's hope can see what is normally invisible. Hope can feel what is normally intangible. Hope can help us realize what is normally unimaginable. To know of this hope is to know of God. Hope joins us as we wait in the queue, shuffling forward, and offers to steady us and guide us. This hope is grounded in the way Jesus, in whom the invisible, intangible, and unimaginable God is fully present, became human, lived and died. And this was all done to reconcile a people who had rushed on in their lives with no time for God and suffered terribly for doing so. Through his resurrection, the putting right of things, and reconciliation, came restoration to life in abundance. If hope brings about reconciliation, then restoration will follow. And you don't necessarily need a religious faith to see examples of God's capacity for restoring life. Given time, space, and not rushed, look at the way a human body can physically heal. The way a forest can regrow after a devastating fire. The way spring follows winter. Despite our loss, and still carrying our grief, our shuffle can become a stride. All Souls, then, is about not rushing on, but acknowledging our place in the procession. All Souls is about shuffling slow enough in order to receive God's gift of hope being poured into our hearts. And All Souls helps us all steadily move forwards with others, with God, towards reconciliation and the restoration of all our lives.